Jessica Morden.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I also join in the congratulations to the Ministers and Secretary of State on their new appointments. And I don't think anybody wants to delay this legislation any further today for those 30 to 60,000 people who will benefit from this change. And therefore, I will confine my remarks to second reading. It's a pleasure to speak in support, as others have said, of today's bill, which represents an important milestone in the long struggle to improve how our benefit system treats the terminally ill. That we're debating this vital legislation in government time today is no accident, but the result of years of dogged work by organisations like the Motor Neurone Disease Association and Marie Curie, both of whom were huge support to me when I introduced a 10-minute rule bill on this subject in 2020. And it's also, as others have said, testament to many local volunteers who support those organisations' work in their communities. And on that note, I'd like to thank Judith Rice and the very active South East Wales branch of MND Association who brought this issue to my attention and have continued to lobby for change. And I also, like my honourable friend, the Honourable Member for Inverness, want to pay tribute to campaigners across the country like Mark Hughes, like Michelle McCluskey, and the Honourable Member is quite right that this is their victory with those organisations. And indeed, my very good friend Madeleine Moon, the former member for Bridgend, who is in fact in the gallery I see there this afternoon. I'm glad she's here to see this. And the chair, her campaigning work on this and her campaigning zeal was born out of her own tragic lot, and she was particularly dedicated to this. And alongside the chair of the APVG on terminal illness, the Honourable Member for Inverness, did a lot of very good work on this and did a lot of good work to call out the systematic injustices faced by those living with terminal illness. I also want to personally thank Mark Jackson from Marie Curie and Alison Railton and Lana Gafford, both formerly of the MND Association, who were a great help to both the All-Party Group, I know, but also to me during the 10-minute rule bill. And can I also thank the government for listening? And whilst I and others will be, critical of the delays we've seen in getting this legislation to the table over the last 2 and more years, I'm grateful that we're here today and that ministers have recognised the broad cross-party support that exists on this change. And I'd like to thank the former minister, the member for North Swindon, for, there was some very dogged campaigning on this issue, which I know, but he did listen and he did move things forward. And I know he's had the chance today to set out the complexities of some of this, and that will therefore be on record. As others have outlined, this bill will bring an end to the hated 6-month rule, a cruel stipulation which forced many of the most vulnerable people in our society to prove they had 6 months or less to live in order to receive benefits under those special rules. And the 6-month rule was always illogical for those living with complex and unpredictable terminal illnesses like motor neurone. Given an exact prognosis of life expectancy within a half-year window was often impossible. And it is a disgrace that so many households were pushed through that inhumane, bureaucratic hoop at a time of unimaginable pain and worry. The 6-month rule, as others have said, has thankfully already been removed from the special rules claims for ESA and universal credit, and this bill will ensure that the same is true for PIP attendance allowance in DLA. And it's crucial that this legislation now has a swift passage onto the statute book. And for that reason, colleagues in the Lords ensured the bill passed through the other place unamended. And on behalf of terminally ill people in my constituency and across the country who simply can't afford to wait any longer, I would support a similar course of action here today. The 6-month rule may soon be consigned to history, but there's still so much more to do to ensure that terminally ill people are afforded the dignity and respect they deserve from our social security system. And I want to speak just to some of these connected, ongoing injustices today. The 3-year award duration rule is still in place, forcing terminally ill people to reapply for their benefits if they live for longer than 3 years. And as the MND Association have pointed out, they've pointed to cases where people have outlived their prognosis but were extremely ill, completely paralysed, ventilated or unable to speak, receiving letters telling them that their benefits would stop unless they made a new claim. And as with the 6-month rule, this isn't just cruel but illogical. For an example, when an applicant can receive a 10-year PIP award with only a light touch review after a decade for having a severe or lifelong disability, if they have a terminal illness, they might be made to do a re-application after 3 years, which makes no sense. Another issue to look at going forward would be the 12-month rule, which has replaced the 6th predecessor. And while it's clear the DWP wanting to ensure some time-bound definition for the special rules remained in place, it's important ministers commit to reviewing the impact of the change to see that it's having the desired effect, or whether significant numbers of terminally ill people are still being disadvantaged. And the government really must be diligent in monitoring this and keep all options on the table for the future, including looking at whether a time-bound model is more appropriate than a timescale-free model, such as the one adopted in Scotland. And I hope the Minister can speak a little bit more to this later on, and at the very least commit to a regular evaluation of the new system. It is important today to note that the bill will not be enough in itself to protect dying people from falling into poverty. As Marie Curie have pointed out, and it was raised by the Honourable Member for North Ayrshire at Business Questions, this bill covers access to benefits, but not the adequacy of those benefits, which research shows is all too often inadequate in meeting the impact on finances caused by the additional costs and the loss of income which follow having a terminal diagnosis. Marie Curie have highlighted the cumulative impact of the benefit cap over the last 12 years, which has meant, in real terms, working age benefits are now less generous than they were under the last Labour government, and benefit rates have fallen behind inflation over the last decade, even before the current cost of living crisis. Marie Curie's research shows that 90,000 people die in poverty each year in the UK, with those of working age twice as likely to fall into poverty at the end of life. And that number is only likely to have gone up over the last 8 months, with household bills, the price of food and other essentials going up, and benefit rates not rising to meet the shortfall. We face the prospect of more terminally ill people falling into poverty. So I'd urge the government to engage with Marie Curie on their Dying in Poverty campaign, which had its launch yesterday in Parliament. The campaign's aim to ensure that everybody with a terminal illness is able to access the financial support they need to cope with the cost of housing, with energy, childcare and disability at their end of the life is really important. And it includes looking at proposals to ensure that terminally ill people of working age are able to access their state pension early, and in the immediate short term looking at targeted support on soaring energy bills for terminally ill people, given their particular vulnerability to fuel poverty. Madam Deputy Speaker, I believe this afternoon is one of those rare occasions when the whole House is united in our determination to improve how our social security system treats some of the most vulnerable people in our society. That's important, and this legislation is really important. What is doubly critical, though, is that these changes represent a starting point rather than a full stop. We must ensure we do more and strengthen our resolve to ensure that none of our constituents or loved ones ever face the indignity of spending their final months worrying about whether they will have enough money to make it through the week. Until the wonderful day when cures are found for the wretched terminal illnesses which blight so many lives, our priority should be to ensure that our welfare system affords every dying person the dignity, decency and respect they deserve, and it cuts to the core of what we want our social security system to be and what we want our country to stand for. But thank you today for the legislation.